Hi, this is our interview two. We're part of the Math Hawks. My name is Joshua Vann, and this is also Drew Galloway. And we're supposed to be talking about breaking down some different definitions as far as from vocabulary words. We weren't able to do this as our full group, so we may not have everything that's on this list, but we will have a majority of them. Hey, Drew, what age group has the highest percentage of handheld cell phone drivers?
Well, the highest age group is 16 to 24, but as people realize how dangerous it has become, you'll notice that it tends to slope down. They started to not text and drive as much anymore.
That's interesting.
Hey, Josh, when can you use a pivot chart to show data?
You can use a pivot chart to show data whenever you have two different groups of information that you want to show, but you want to show it together. Like here, we're doing the number of diagnosis parentitis with the acres of planted corn, and then also showing the years. So you're able to see the amount of people that got sick from this disease, and also the amount of corn that was actually yielded that year. And you're able to see on this chart that the more corn that was grown, the more people got sick.
It's a nice chart.
Yeah. All right. Drew, why should you use a bar graph?
Bar graphs are used to compare things between different groups or to track changes over time. However, when trying to measure change over time, bar graphs are the best when the changes are larger. So when you want to show, like on here with our fatalities, over time with all the deaths, it shows better representation than any other graph does.
That's interesting.
Hey, Josh, when looking at a graph, what is an outlier?
An outlier is, if you look at the chart, an outlier is usually something that isn't the same as the others. So it may all of a sudden just jump out of sequence. You can see that the very top one, it takes and has a real steep jump, and before it kind of levels out with the rest. And then the bottom one also, it has a real sharp dip, and those are usually outliers because they are not consistent with the other information. What is exponential growth?
Exponential growth is growth whose rate becomes ever more rapid portions to the growth total number of size. If you look at our graph with children with autism, you'll notice that as the years go on, that there's more and more children with autism, which shows the growth of autism in America.
That's definitely neat. It helps you see the information a little bit easier.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, does it matter the statutes you file when filing your taxes and how you could graph it using independent or dependent values?
If you notice the three examples above, each have different filing statuses. The amount of money might depend on the taxes that you owe. Like in the first set of columns, it's if you're a head of household. The middle is if you're single, or on the far right, it's if you're uh, married filing jointly. And let's see, sorry about that. Uh, if you have a graph, the data I would use, I would put it on a bar chart. My y-axis or independent data would be the titles of each row of the above, and the y-axis or dependent data would be the amount of money.
That'd be good to know when I file my taxes.
Yeah, at least then you kind of know what you're getting back.
Yeah.
All right, Drew, what is the use of a double bar graph?
A double bar graph is a graphical display of information using two bars beside each other at various heights. The bars can be arranged vertically or horizontally. We can use a double bar graph to compare two data groups, as the double bar has two axes. And if you look at the other fatalities by gender, you'll notice that the orange one are males, and then the blue ones are females, and then the gray ones that you can't really see on there are unknown. But usually when you have you can do male or female by gender, or you can do by species. So if you had like German Shepherds or anything, it just really helps out when you need to put them in different categories.
Yeah, it definitely lets you see everything in a different dynamic.
What are correlations and how do they relate to graphs?
The difference between like a positive correlation and a negative correlation is a positive correlation is your line will move up, or your information will move up from left to right, where a negative, you start out higher and you'll subtract, or you'll take and have your data drop off. So like on the one on the chart on the left, it shows a positive correlation because all of the information is rising up, it's not dropping. Where negative correlation, it like on the middle one, it'll show the information or data as it drops, as it slopes down. And then you have no correlation, where just like on the one on the right, it doesn't have you can't use a line to show if any of the information is constant. It's pretty well scattered.
So if we're talking about my bank account, hopefully it's positive.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully the bank count goes up and not down. But after paying bills, it definitely goes down.
Oh yeah.
Drew, what is a half-life?
A half-life is the time taken for the radioactivity of a specific isotope to fall to half of its original value, or half of its life. So basically, when you take an ibuprofen or a leave, as shown on my graph here, it's usually, if you take it within, like here it shows in 14 hours, it will be at 50%. So it won't be at 100% anymore, but it will still be working at 50% in 14 and a half hours.
That's interesting. That at least lets you know if you try to take too much medication.
Yeah. Why would we need to use a line of best fit for a graph?
A line of best fit, or a trend line, we use when the data is on a scatter plot, and all of it correlates either positive or negative. You should be able to see a line of best fit. And this this graph looks like it's a negative correlation because all of the information is dropping. It's not it's not raising up, so it's not a positive. And this is looking at cell phone usage between between the age of 16 and 24.
Well, you can definitely see the difference between generations.
Yeah, yeah. The different ages, they sometimes use more and sometimes less. All right, Drew. What year was GE cotton the highest?
All right, the highest point is going to be 90%, and that was at 2012. It tries to trick you a little bit on here with the point at 80% because it looks like it's at kind of like you were talking about, where it jumps up to that point by itself. But that's actually not it. If you continue to look down to 2012, you'll notice that it actually goes past the 80% and hits 90%.
Yeah, they try to trick you with graphs like this. They give you a lot of information in a little bitty spot.
Oh yeah. Can you explain how a chart will have exponential growth or decay?
Uh, as far as like for the half-life of ibuprofen, this chart shows exponential decay because if you look at your equation, we're actually minusing or subtracting whenever we do our equation. And this, this is a pretty smooth decay. Now, a decay will not go all the way to zero. And with the exponential growth, this chart is a pretty good indication of an exponential growth, but it is not completely accurate because an exponential growth will be more consistent, where this graph actually at year 2001 kind of jumps up a little bit on its own, and it doesn't have a consistent growth. So both of these are pretty good examples of exponential growth and decay of what we were given to work with. Okay, and that looks like it. So this has been our presentation as far as for our interview number 2. And it's been enjoyable discussing this different information for everyone.
I definitely had fun.
Yeah.